Welcome to the October version of Waste Not, Want Not. I'm delighted to bring you a really juicy conversation this month with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Burningham. He draws on wisdom from the classroom, the boardroom, from politics, and as a preacher. And it's really fascinating to talk about intelligence and how AI is a useful tool, but it will never pair with us as humans because we have a heart and a soul that actually drives us. It's very timely because Jeff was, when he started out and he's transitioned into a journey of where he used to strive for success, and now he's really embodying what it means to actually go inside and discover who we are as humans. And as my own journey has been about failure and having to prove myself, I found it absolutely fascinating. So I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Waste Not, Want Not podcast, Jeff, all the way from Utah. Thank you so much for coming to the show. We're here to celebrate your new book, which is the last book written by a human, Becoming Wise in the Age of AI.
Yes, Philippa. So good to be with you today.
I'm intrigued as a writer myself. Did you always think there was a book inside you or no?
No, it was funny. I was just at a lunch here in Utah speaking to a bunch of people about the book. And they said, is this just another thing that you've checked off your list, something you wanted to do? The book has become a national bestseller, at least here in the States. And the answer was no. I never thought I would write a book. It was never on my list of to-dos. This was a book that really just came out of me. It felt like it had to be written. And in fact, I wrote it in such a vulnerable, open way. I would have never chosen, to do it like this, but it's what had to happen. And so it feels good to have it out in the world.
So how long has it taken you to put together?
Yeah, that's kind of a long story. Maybe I'll start with the beginning and then we can either dive in deeper if you want to, or we can try to make it shorter. Well, if you remember, I start the book on the Ganges River
Yes.
in Varanasi, India.
Yeah.
And the day or two after that, my wife and I flew to Tibet, China, actually. This is 8 years ago.
Right.
And I was woken up in the middle of the night, like we are sometimes, with our higher self, God, the universe speaking, saying, "You're a writer." And I said, "No, I'm not a writer." "No, you really need to start writing." And I started listing. At that time, I was running a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm. I was investing about $100 million of venture capital money here in the United States. And, I was a father of four, all the things. No, 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 I'm not a writer. Kind of argued with myself, or with God, you could say, for an hour till I couldn't sleep. So I got up and quietly started plunking at the keys while my wife, Sally, slept. So that was the very beginning. But I came back to the States, got busy running my companies, and then ran for governor here in the state of Utah. So a statewide campaign for the gubernatorial race. So got really busy again, but then I lost during the pandemic. So the most critical months of the campaign were March, April, May, and June of 2020.
Wow.
And right when COVID hit the United States, and I was running against two very well-known political candidates. And so there was no way that a political outsider, I was an entrepreneur, a business guy like myself, was going to win amidst all of that disruption. So I lost into the summer of 2020. I'm sure we all have interesting stories about the summer of 2020. But what I found in my life was that I had space and time for the first time in my entire adult life. I grew up as a Mormon, a Christian, a Latter-day Saint, in a very high demand kind of boxed religion, and it keeps you on the fast track. I got married very young, had children very young. I served as a bishop in my congregation very young. I was building companies. I was so busy doing. This is kind of where I start the book, if you recall, kind of climbing my little mountain of success, almost addicted, I would say, to doing. And when I got to the top of the mountain, I say in the book, there's nothing but a cold, howling wind, only void, like more void on top of that. It didn't answer all my questions. It didn't solve all my problems. Just because I had had some worldly success, it didn't provide the answers. What I was really looking for is, I think, Philippa, what we're really looking for is already inside of us. It's not outside of us. And I was so busy, and I'd been trained. This is in the air, collective air we all breathe, that it's about the external,
Yep.
external validation, winning awards, doing this, blah, 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 blah. And I finally had a chance in the summer of 2020 to go inside myself. And so I did that. I dove back into the venture work that I had missed. I was investing a lot of money in technology companies. And so I dove back into that in the summer of 2020. And of course, the technology that stuck out above all others was AI. And I was immediately attracted to it in terms of the kind of spiritual or existential implications for humanity. And so I got more serious about writing then. I had another experience actually in India about 2.5 years ago now, where my third eye just blasted open. And I had heard of a third eye. I didn't even know what that was.
Wow.
And I'm literally Googling, what is a third eye and what is happening to me? That's when writing the book became non-negotiable. Like, I had to write the book. I knew I would literally run from this little Ayurvedic lodge that my wife and I were staying at in Kerala, India. I would run from that spa lodge to our room and just type for hours on end. It was just kind of stream of consciousness kind of coming through me. So anyways, that's when the book had to be written. That's the high level kind of process. There were a lot more steps in between, of course, and this was not an easy book for me to write.
Wow. And one of the things that really strikes me, which I think is fascinating and inspirational, is the very fact that you were talking, you didn't even know what a third eye was. And the fact that you're male, because there's a lot of thing about this going inwards journey that people think is kind of out there woo-woo. And I've got science to base my stuff on because that's what people look at. But none of the science addresses I always get these two mixed up. One is quantifying and one is qualifying. The subjective experience, the existential experience that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the other thing that strikes me is, if you'd served as a bishop, how did your learnings and the way that you are addressing your congregation, how did that not influence the fact that there's something inside you? Or was it the fact that the outside world that you were a part of just drowned it all out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it did influence me. I was a bishop from the age of like 27 to 32. And it absolutely helped me to see the world in a whole different way. I had a congregation of 500 people, ages, 100 to 1 years old, families, single people, all different kinds of people. And what I realized is that the human condition comes for us all. It really doesn't matter even necessarily your specific set of circumstances or the challenges that you're facing. But really, everything quote unquote good and everything quote unquote bad is happening in every neighborhood around the world. The human condition is real, and it's a challenge for all of us. I remember an experience where I would counsel with members of my congregation for 10 hours almost every Sunday.
Well,
Just a stream of people that needed help, that had questions, that were quote unquote confessing sins. And I felt that as a young man. I felt that I was young, I was inexperienced. I didn't know why I had this calling so young. And I remember I was kneeling in my office, my little bishop's office at the church, kneeling, kind of praying, preparing myself for the 10 hours of interviews I was about to have. And I remember catching a picture of the Savior on my wall in my office and realizing, wait a second, these aren't my burdens. these were burdens that we could share together as humanity, that we could even, put onto the Savior to kind of help us become better, to repent, to become more whole. And so it affected greatly everything that I experienced, everything that I knew at that time. But I would say that the spiritual awakening that I've undergone since the gubernatorial race 5 years ago has been even more of a felt sense. It's been more real to me. I became a religious meditator after the governor's race. I've had a couple of experiences now with psychedelics. I've done a lot of breath work, a lot of different things that I never had time to do before that have brought me more, maybe a even felt sense of this spirituality, this divinity, which lies within each of us. As you know, Philippa, there's so much division and hate in our world. There's so many differences. I mean, you're from England, you live in New Zealand. I'm from Utah. I grew up in this religion you've heard of, but don't know much about. And vice versa. You're a woman, I'm a man. Like there's so much that is different about us, but that diversity is meant to bring beauty to this existence. It makes living delicious, fun, meaningful. It does not have to be our collective undoing. No matter your politics or mine, et cetera, whenever we sit across from another human, we are more net. And I start to get a real sense of that as a bishop. Obviously, that was exacerbated when I ran for governor and saw neighbors that were really a lot more alike than different, that were angry with each other over different things they'd seen in social media or different things that their political parties respectively stood for, really were fellow travelers. And there's a divine unity or oneness that is actually a lot more real than this division that we feel in the world that is largely illusory. It's an illusion. It's not really the base truth. I was a missionary for my church in North Carolina. I've always been someone who's looked to spiritual matters and taken them seriously. Still do, although obviously my views are shifting and changing a bit. And so, yeah, it's kind of a continual unfolding, isn't it, Philippa? Haven't you found that in your life that things continue to unfold?
And they make more sense. Again, I think what you're saying is, for me, it's standing above. When you take a more objective view and you're looking down on things, you can see the connection of everything. I mean, as I say, I work with science. And so for me, it's all about energy. We are basically fractals of the cosmos, and we are all part of one great big community. I went to a convent, and the nuns were the most uncharitable, unholy people that ever existed.
Isn't that ironic?
Absolutely. And for me, the hypocrisy of the people I came across. So the word God didn't sit with me. And I can remember somebody suggesting I read Conversations with God, which I avoided because it had the God word in. When you talk of divinity, I probably only embraced that word in the last 10 years or so. And Greg Braden talks about it as about the transcendence above the conditions that we have been given. So we're all part of something that is divine and beautiful. And then I was listening to a podcast with Louis, I can't remember how you pronounce his surname, Schwarzner or something. And he's done the documentary on fungi and the interconnection of the fungi and the beauty. And it's all time lapse and seeing everything works together underneath. We just don't see it. And the beauty of everything, we, again, like you were making a reference, is we think it's in the outside world, but it goes, beauty is skin deep. It's within, it's that essence. It is actually like nature. The diversity, we are two human beings, but the difference is we will always find something in common. So to me, the word community is common and unity. So we're unifying something that we have in common, and everybody has that. And the more we embrace, and as you did as a bishop, to help one another, to see things from a different perspective and send that love out. I mean, wouldn't it just be scrummy? That's my great big ambition, is to bring everything together, to see the beauty in our diversity, like nature, because it makes the world go round.
Absolutely. I mean, I talk about in the book how AI, I believe, is a cosmic mirror to humanity.
The,
It's just a reflection of all of human data
yes,
and recorded history,
yes,
and then how we interact with it. And it reflects something back to us. And reflection can be a scary thing.
yes.
As a 48-year-old guy going into my middle age and a little bit older, like a reflection can be a scary thing, but it's also a beautiful thing. And it gives us an opportunity to change in ways that we think we can. I talk about AI as a crucible that humanity must go through together. In this instance, as is often the case, gloriously, the obstacle becomes the way. And in this reflection that AI will provide for us, we can become more human. We can lean into the beautiful messiness that makes us human. We can lean into this divine unity that we've been speaking about, the oneness, the stillness, non duality, however you want to talk about it, that is the underpinning of this entire existence. And I think if we can relate to that in a more healthy and happy way, if we can accept with ease, love, and grace who we really are and what reality is, then the future of humanity can be beautiful. And AI can be a tool to help increase human flourishing. Now, if we focus on division, I'm worried. I'm a father of four. I'm actually a grandpa. I have a 1-year-old grandson, and I'm concerned about my children and grandchildren's future in a world that is divided fictitiously or in ways that are an illusion via the almighty algorithm of social media or whatever the case may be. And so, yeah, in the last book written by a human, I try to point humanity to a beautiful outcome with AI. The truth is, as our machines become more and more intelligent, which is what's happening, we as humans must become more wise.
Yes. So I'd like you to qualify intelligence and wisdom, because I have an opinion
Okay.
as well.
Why don't you tell me yours? Go for it. I want to hear yours.
Intelligence. So I speak from experience because I failed school. And so, again, it was about an academia. It was your early journey of succession. You're having to prove yourself and be validated because you have measured up to society. Intelligence to me is really information. And it's also that energy. It's in formation. And AI has an ability to hold a lot more data and process it than we do as humans. So it is a tool. Wisdom comes from the integration of how we are informed and how we integrate it, but it's an inner knowing. And I found myself do my own writing and things. You write things, you think things, and you think, where the chuff did that come from? It's an inner knowing. And then you go out to get validation and see what else other people's opinions and things, how that integrates. I mean, at 64, I couldn't give a flying fart anymore where people believe me or not. It just is. But I also don't take things personally if people don't agree with me, because to me, what you're saying is it's about a perspective. You can learn from me, but you have to have an open mind to receive my perspective. I'm not asking you to agree with me at all, and I won't take it personally if you don't. But if your mind is open and ask questions, it can inspire you to go off and find your own way, and we can bring it all together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Two thoughts that I have on that. Number one, a way to think about of AI is like intelligence without a soul or intelligence without a body, in search of a body or a soul, potentially.
Yeah.
So, like you said, AI doesn't have to forget anything. It can spot patterns in enormous amounts of data that humans cannot. Those are some of the blessings and benefits potentially of AI. But it can't be wise like we are, Philippa. It can't know loss, death, empathy. And so it can't have this embodied wisdom that comes. In the book, I talk about three universal teachers, which we all have. One is our bodies, you know. We have so much embodied wisdom at our disposal. Now, we often hate our bodies or want them to change or be different, and obviously AI does not have a body. The second teacher is our families and or intimate human relationship. Although we may feel like we have a quote unquote intimate relationship with Chat GPT or our favorite AI, it's not like a human relationship. Again, it can't feel this empathy or embodied wisdom that we feel. And so, really, it's in the beauty of human relationship where we find community and connection. We can come back to ourselves, we can heal, we can transform. So, those relationships aren't in the way, even though they're hard sometimes, even though they're messy, they actually are the way. And then the third universal teacher that AI doesn't experience, at least like we do, is nature. You spoke about it. Nature is showing to us the reality of what is all the time. It does it through the rising and the setting sun every day. It does it through the seasons. It does it through life, death, and rebirth. That is the existence that we are a part of, that we're living in as humans. And so these universal teachers, they hold so much wisdom that AI can never grasp the way that you and I can as humans or that humanity can. Now it's up to us in the age of intelligent machines, in the age of AI, to actually capture those, to embody those, to be those, both individually. That starts with me, that starts with you. But then as we become wise, that also can spread to the collective humanity because we all are connected in some very important ways.
Yeah, and again, it speaks to the rhythm of life with nature, and as you say, the seasons, it's the energy. And so when we embody that wisdom, then we are projecting it and it has an exponential effect on other people as well. Just going back to earlier, you were talking about AI being the crucible. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, as you know, Philippa, it seems like humans need pain sometimes to make progress.
Right.
We need pain to go inside. We need pain to grow, to transform, to evolve. AI, I think, is going to bring a lot of pain. It already is. Disinformation, division.
Right.
We have the opportunity to come back to ourselves, to our higher selves, to the best of humanity. We can choose to receive all of this with what I like to call ease, love, and grace or equanimity. Or we can fight against what really is. We can continue to be, quote unquote, at war with who we are and what reality is. That war inside of us spills to the external world and then is manifest in a myriad of destructive and ugly ways. But if we can come back to ourselves, if we can remember the beauty that it is to be human, if it reminds us of that, which I think it will through pain, unfortunately, I think that we can use AI as a tool to, in essence, I talk about it in the book as kind of a judgment day for humanity. It's a reflection that we get to look at, deal with, and decide how we treat it and what we do to change and transform ourselves.
Yeah, it really speaks volumes to me about your own experiences and the journey you've been on with driving and success and the external world. We think we're superior because we have a brain and we can work things out. That we are brought up as codependent to be independent, and we end up being codependent on everything. But to me, this journey is about interdependence. And I think that's the hard thing for people to get their head around. We are unique, but we are a part of something. And we all contribute to this great big picture. And we don't need to seek validation. It's for others to see it and allowed to flow as opposed to being steered. And when we look at and see the value in ourselves, then it has a huge impact on other people. We don't need to prove. And again, when you were talking about the pain side, sometimes we have to see what doesn't work in order to decide what's right for us. It's the polarity. And you were talking about the quote, good and bad. For me, it's like the positive or negative. They're just different vibrations. And so we could be in the same environment and you could experience it as good and I could experience it as bad because it vibrates differently with me. I've had different experiences. And I think part of the lesson is that embodiment and understanding of oneself and one's part of it that is so crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. And, AI has a vibration and it should be used as a tool and it can be used as a tool in a lot of good ways. It can also, unfortunately, I call social media basically baby AI or infant AI. It's humanity's first general use case, meaning most of humanity has used and is familiar with social media in some form or fashion. It's our first use case of how the almighty algorithm either helps us or hurts us. And I think we've seen so much division, come from social media. We look at our young people and how their lack of self-esteem or mental fitness, how they struggle with social media. And again, we can take a step back and say, okay, is this really helping us to connect or is it disconnecting us? And then we as humans get to make the choice again, individually and collectively. How can we use this technology to actually create community and connection? The book is laid out in 4 sections that I think I've seen hundreds of times as a venture capitalist.
Yep.
It's how technology happens, but it's also analogous to our spiritual awakening, in my opinion. And those sections are number 1, disruption.
Yep.
Change is the only constant.
Yep.
We can act like it's not. That is the only constant. So disruption is hard and painful. The second step, though, is an opportunity to reflect. It's reflection. What does this change mean about me? How can I change to be more useful amongst a dynamic world? Whatever the case may be. And in that time of reflection, we can either lean into our heroic journey, we can lean into the hero's call. And if we do, we then go to the third step, which is transformation. We enter the unknown, our collective heroic journey begins. And then the last step is evolution, where the hero has some gained wisdom, internal strength and wisdom that they have brought from their own experience, and they share it with the tribe. They share it with the world. And that's how the book is laid out. And in that last evolution section, I talk about conscious capitalism. I talk about reforming religion. I talk about the role of AI in changing education. And then I also talk about a new political movement that I call the human political movement that points AI squarely at human flourishing. That's the way the book rolls out. It's the way that technology rolls into our lives. It's the way that disruption and change happens, both externally and also internally, like on a spiritual level. It mirrors the hero's journey in some interesting ways. So, yeah, it was a fun book to write. It wasn't easy for me. It was very heartfelt and vulnerable. But like I said, I feel like the message is meeting the moment here in 2025.
I think it's powerful, and the fact that you've embraced the hero's journey underpins a lot of things. And the fact that you've simplified what is actually really, really complicated, which again is key, because that is one of the problems I think of the world, is trying to make it complicated. So it makes people appear to be more intelligent, but when you strip everything bare, It's really quite simple. So I love the way that you've laid it out and how you've integrated it and applied it. And so it's going back to the beginning of the interview where you pulled on your own experiences with companies and with politics and things. And again, that can, particularly politics, can divide people. How do you see it reforming politics? I'm intrigued. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's a lot of ego in politics.
Yes, there is. Well, a couple of thoughts. Number one, thank you. One of the reasons this book was so hard to write was I am writing about all the biggest things. I am writing about existence. I am writing about the great mystery. And I'm writing about it as it relates to our embodied existence here as humans. Someone left a review the other day saying, like, this is the everyman's journey to awakening, which I really liked because I was trying to make it simple. So thank you for that. Change often takes a death, doesn't it? Like an ego death.
Yes.
Yeah, that's personal and that's collective. I think we each have an ego. It's not all bad, but it can be bad. And the collective has an ego as well. Our leaders are a reflection of us, politically and otherwise. And so when our leaders are acting a certain way, we need to ask ourselves as humanity, like, what does this say about us? So I think that it can change politics through kind of an ego death. I think that more and more leaders, politically, CEOs of companies, religious leaders, are going to be able to put on the altar their specialness, their difference, and kind of sacrifice that on the altar for the betterment of all. So that's how I think it occurs. I think it occurs from the ground up. I think that there is a global awakening happening. I'm betting on a renaissance of consciousness here in humanity over the next decade. I think that AI can add fuel to that awakening. And that awakening will filter up, I believe, because again, I think our politicians are a reflection of us ultimately. And I think it's up to us to look into the mirror and say, are they representing what we really think is best? I think there's a new brand of leaders that are being raised up, that are maturing, that are growing, that will serve us better. At least I hope so. And again, leaders of all different types of institutions are definitely going to have ample opportunity in the age of AI to sacrifice their own best interests, the bottom line, you might say, in business, for what is better for humanity. And I talk about the old game versus the new game in the book.
Yeah.
I think the old game is crescendoing. This old game of like division where like cash is the currency, power is the motivation, control is the reason. I think that's burning out of our system. At least I hope so. And I'm sure you do as well. I think a new game is emerging.
Yep.
Where karma is the currency, authenticity is the motivation, and love is the reason. So we can opt into that new game. We can play a higher, holier, quote unquote, game. And I think that's what's happening. I think that that will filter from the bottom up. And I just hope it happens in time for us to make it. I hope we can do it as beautifully and peacefully as possible this time around.
I definitely think so. The shit is coming to the surface. It's the chaos. It's the eye of the storm. And it depends on the perspective you take. Hard point is actually, as you were saying, is to look outside and seeing what part of you is reflected there. When you stood for governance, that must have been a bit of a dent in your ego to a certain extent. Did you experience any element of that for yourself?
Absolutely. I think I was a very public defeat. It was a statewide defeat. Utah is a big state. Only about 4 million people or so live here, but it was a very public defeat. And I lost into, like I said, the heart of COVID. And so not only did I lose, but I didn't have the healing balm of human connection that usually, hopefully, surrounds you when you experience an ego death or a loss like that. So that's, I think, what caused me to go inside. What I realized about a year after I lost the race, and I'm sure you could probably recognize this at times in your life, Philippa, my subconscious was taking me off the stage. I had built this little beautiful stage in Utah where I was running companies and a quote unquote important person, blah, blah, blah. And that just evaporated underneath me.
Right.
And that's what caused me to go inside. I've been an adjunct professor here at the university down the street for a number of years. I've taught thousands of students about entrepreneurship. And one of the things that I often say to them is that the most simple ideas are often the most powerful and therefore the most neglected.
Mm.
And this is one of those that the answers we're looking for are really already inside of us.
Mm.
And so I think as AI brings some amount of pain to humanity, more and more of us will ask these important questions. Who am I really? Why am I here? You know, like, where do we really want to go as the human race? What is the difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence? Is artificial intelligence conscious at all? Is it conscious like I am? And these types of questions will cause an internal reckoning that I think ultimately, at least I hope, this is what I'm going to work for the coming decades of my career. It will cause an awakening and a transformation and evolution inside of humanity.
I came across a quote the other day, and apparently Marianne Williamson said it apparently 3 years ago. We're of an era where we are like death doulas to the material world and birth doulas to a new world. And I thought it's actually fascinating because death itself is a taboo subject, but I found myself connecting with death as an understanding of life, and which you tend to do in your latter years because it gets closer. But the reality is, with the indigenous cultures, is an integral part of their understanding. It's the cycle of life, it's nature. And it's important to recognize that we are forever evolving, as you say. And the other thing I want to make reference to, you're talking about the complicated, how the simplest ideas in business are the best. And I found it when I studied psychology, it was made so complicated in books this taught. And that is the purpose behind writing my own book, is to put it in a way that is relatable. Like you're saying, the politicians creating their own altar as human beings, passionate about something as opposed to trying to do everything. They're putting their humanness on the line, and that is what's important. I just think authenticity at the end of the day, it's like love me or leave me. It doesn't matter to me. I will attract the people that I have a need for, my community. It doesn't mean anybody else is more or less than me. I don't need validation, but that comes with wisdom.
Yes, that does. That comes with wisdom and experience, and it comes in the human experience. Yeah, the truth of reality is right in front of our face always,
Yes.
but it's like so close to us that we miss it right there for us in all of our human experience. And I think it's a return to this, as you would say, simple wisdom that is key in the age of highly intelligent machines. Look, what do humans do when a machine can do so much of what we're used to doing better than we can, more efficiently, more cost effectively? What are we left with? We're left with our being. We're human beings, Philippa, not human doings. And so what is that being really? You know, like, how do we grasp that more wholly and tangibly? It's interesting how a lot of these spiritual teachers, Marianne Williamson, you could take Eckhart Tolle, who talks about a new earth kind of being born. And it's the same way that I talk about in my book, the death of the old game and the beginning of the new game. There's similar concepts of consciousness rising within our being, our beingness. It's not in our doing, it's in our being. And so, again, one of the benefits of AI could be a return to our beingness in some ways. It can allow humans a little more space and time to lean into their being, to go inside, to do the internal work that we all have to do, and to come out in a more loving, authentic way. And as you said several minutes ago, when each one of us does that, it blesses the whole. Not only does it bless our life, which it does, you and I have experienced that, we know it firsthand, but it also has ripple effects. It ripples out to the rest of humanity. It's an exciting future that we're looking at. It's not going to be easy. And there's going to be a lot of challenges, but it's one that, like I've said, I think we need to embrace with as much ease, love, and grace as we possibly can muster.
And I think that beingness is so important because it just reflects to me on like the education system and children and play, and they are in the moment. And that child that is staring out of the window, looking at something, dreaming and taking time out to create. So this is what we're doing with the energy as receivers of information from the cosmos. We're bringing that information and transforming the information in a creative way that AI cannot possibly do. We can put stuff in and ask AI to help us make sense of all the ideas, because I'm an ideas person, and actually formulating it. Going back to your journey of the book, how did you find this information? It sounded like you channeled a part of the book, but how did you formulate it, or were you informed, instinctive? Did you just follow the flow of that for it to come to life?
Yeah, I think so. I was in New York a couple weeks ago, and someone said to me about the book, "Oh, this feels so familiar." And I was just like, wow, okay, that's the greatest compliment I could receive. I wanted the book to feel familiar for all of your listeners. Pick it up or listen to it on Audible, however you like, and see if it feels familiar to you. So, my point is, that's how it came to me. I'm sitting in the river Ganges, as you recall at the beginning of the book. And to my left is one of the largest crematoriums in the world. There are literally bodies covered by one white sheet, dead bodies, being set ablaze by the river Ganges. Now, growing up in the Western US, this is not something I experienced or had seen before.
Yeah.
An hour later, right in front of me, there was probably 30 or 40 pilgrims and locals literally baptizing themselves, being reborn, you could say, through the ashes of death. And then another 50 or so yards down the river to my right was a group of people doing the very mundane task of every day, the laundry. They were literally scrubbing white linens that were probably used to clothe, bring warmth, protect human bodies. This scene that I saw in my view of life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth felt so familiar to me. And I think that's the existence we are living, Philippa. It is a constant, never ending saga of life, death, and rebirth. Our breath mimics that. The rising and the setting of the sun mimics that. Your life or incarnation and mine as Jeff Burningham, as Philippa, we will die and we will be reborn again. And so I think that recognizing this never ending cycle is powerful. And it's the existence that we've been given, it's the existence we have. And I think we experience that. If I could say one more thing before I forget, I think we experience that only in the present moment. Too many of us are stuck in mistakes of the past. We ruminate on a past that we wish was different, but that we are powerless to change.
Yeah.
We can learn from the past, but we can't go back and change the past. Our bodies ground us in the present moment. Or we project, and this is easy to do in the age of AI, and I think it's what a lot of humans are doing in the age of AI. We project into an unknown future, which creates anxiety in our bodies in the present moment. The truth is, the future doesn't exist. It's a fiction. It only exists as we get there in every present moment. So in my experience, in my wisdom, what felt familiar to me and what came back to me and kind of sparked the writing of this book was a recollection of this never ending cycle of life, death, and rebirth that we experience only in every present moment. It's only in the present. It's not the past. It's not a future. There is no future until we get there in the present moment. That scene sparked something in me. It felt familiar in me. And it started an awakening, at least for me, in terms of the reality of who I really was and what this existence really is. And I think we're all on that journey of remembering, I mean, we're all fellow travelers on that journey of life, death, and rebirth. And it's a sad one, it's a hard one, but it's also a beautiful one and a joyous one, an ecstatic one. It's good to lean into those good feelings. Yeah.
It just reminds me of your journey, and the compliment that you got from somebody is as if it was a knowing. It reminds us of the simplicity of life, but equally the complexity of life. I find in my own work, a lot of people go round and round and round in circles and looking at the past, and there's no good in it unless you're going to take something forward for the future. I think the crux of it is that you tuned in, trusted that inner knowing that when you were woken up in the morning, you did something about it in that present moment. And as you relayed, that it evolved over time. It wasn't an immediate something. There was other parts of the journey that actually helped expand it. There's timing to everything, going with the flow and just leaning into that moment, I think is really important. So is there any message
Yeah, I totally agree.
from your book that you would like people to take home for themselves?
Well, I guess just in one simple sentence, like I said before, as our machines become more and more intelligent, we as humans must become more wise. I called the book the last book written by a human because, first of all, a human wrote every painstaking word except the foreword, actually. The foreword is written by ChatGPT, a little spoiler alert. But besides that, I wrote every single painstaking word. So that's one reason. But the second reason, the main reason I called it this was I thought, okay, I'm 48 now, if I was 48 years old, plopped into this body on this earth with so much division, commotion going on, I had all these feelings and emotions and challenges. What would I want to read to give me a sense of like where we're at and what AI means around all of this? And so that's what the last book written by a human is. It's a compilation of human wisdom for an age of intelligent machines. And so there are prompts at the end of each chapter that a lot of readers have told me have been really helpful. They've journaled on them. They've talked about them around the dinner table. I wrote the book to be a conversation starter. And these are conversations that should be had in boardrooms and religious leaders' meetings, and certainly around the dinner table. And we'll see if that leads to some sort of movement, whether it's a human political movement or an awakening, renaissance in consciousness, as I like to talk about it. That's the heart of the book. It's a heartfelt book. It's definitely not a ego. This isn't like, hey, I'm Jeff, I'm so cool, here's all the great things I've done. In fact, I tell you kind of a lot of my faults and shortcomings, and I hope it's relatable. It only matters really if people can see their story in yours and then apply it to their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the heartfelt, the relatable aspect of things, and just, well, it's the authenticity that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what speaks to people. And that's the language of art. I mean, whenever we experience art, whether that's a movie, music, it touches something inside of us. It's reminding us of who we really are and what really is. And it's that spark that we recognize. It's that spark that we can react to. And we can overlay our human experience, our life experience, our story onto that story in a powerful and transformational way. That's the power of art. And I viewed this book as a little piece of art. This was my little offering to the divine. I'm not saying that it's great or worthy of that. I'm saying that I did my damnedest, that I gave it my absolute whole heart and soul, my best effort to write a book that would resonate with people in the age of AI in 2025. What's happening? What's going on? Where are we going? How can AI be a good thing and not a bad thing? Well, here's a roadmap. Here's a plan. Here's an idea around how we can ensure that more humans flourish in the age of AI than not.
And I'd like to say, when I'm speaking for myself, and I guess for you, it has helped affirmed what you knew deep inside you. And it's been a journey for you in writing the book to realize a greater depth and connection to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
So, has there been a book or a person that has actually influenced you in your life?
Oh, so many. I think my favorite book, though, is Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. Rick Rubin's a well known music producer here in the United States and a spiritualist, I guess you could say. I read his book as I was beginning to write mine, and it helped so much with the creative process of writing with the muse in flow. That's been a very impactful book for me.
Fantastic. So, do you have a favorite quote that inspires you, keeps you inspired?
Mm. Mm. I'm not going to say that this might be the most inspirational quote, but I will say, well, actually, I'm going to change it. Okay. One of my most inspirational quotes was by Einstein. Imagination is more important than knowledge.
Yes.
And this is a great quote in the age of AI because theoretically, AI can have all the knowledge. It does. It could take all of human knowledge and not forget any of it, but it doesn't have imagination. It doesn't have creativity. And kind of like you were talking about earlier about these woo-woo spiritual ideas that we've been talking about, it's that imagination that actually leads to human transformation and evolution. It's imagination around knowledge. So that's one of my favorite quotes. Imagination is more important than knowledge.
Absolutely. So, what does Jeff do when he's in a funk?
I either meditate or I'm a former athlete. I was a point guard and the quarterback, played football and basketball in high school. And I love flow activities. I love getting in nature and wake surfing, water skiing, snow skiing, mountain biking. So when I'm in a funk, I try to get into nature and get into my body. Like, so just get into these flow activities that really kind of quiet my mind and bring me back to myself.
My daughter taught me to, well, I can't say that I did surf. I had an experience, put it that way.
Mhm.
And there's nothing like when you get on the wave and you're in the flow and it takes you, yet the mind is just completely not there. It's just so scrumptious to be in that moment, isn't it?
Yeah, man, it's quiet. It's the stillness. It is scrumptious. I
Yeah.
love that word. It's delicious. Yes.
So, if I was your fairy godmother and I could grant you one wish in the world, what would that wish be and why?
Hmm. Um, I would hope for a beautiful future for humanity. This is cliche to say, but honestly, what I want to say is like peace on earth. I would hope for this renaissance in human consciousness that I'm writing about, that I'm kind of betting on and working towards. I'd want that to come about in the most beautiful and peaceful way possible. Like I said, humans need pain often to transform and evolve. But I think that pain is our own choice, often is the case. And so that's what I'd hope for. That's what I'm trying to envision. That's what I'm working towards. A clarity and a peace with our divine unity that underlies everything. And a coming back to ourselves in love, a falling, quote unquote, back in love with being human, with being imperfect, being messy. That's what I'd kind of hope for and wish for. I think that's something that AI in its best form could help accelerate within humanity. And that's what I'm excited about. That's what I'm thinking a lot about these days.
Yeah, I think it's authenticity, being real and raw, and peace outside comes from within, and it's that contentment within with all that messiness that there's no such thing as perfection. That the beauty of life is the imperfections. You look at anything handmade, how it's made, it contains so much love as opposed to something that is machine made, which is quite static and doesn't embody that love. What do you go? That's a good analogy, isn't that?
That is, yeah, it's flat. And that's how I think we're experiencing AI. It's flat. It's just missing that human element. It's almost too perfect. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, there's beauty in that messiness. And it's all about love. We got to come back to love. Again, the most simple ideas are often the most powerful and therefore the most neglected. And one of those is love. Love is the answer. One of the chapters in the book is called Love is the Answer. And I think that is true 99% of the time. Love is the answer.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on bringing it all to life from your imagination and bringing it forth. Is there another book in the making? Do you know?
I think there is. I've already started working on an
Ooh.
outline. It's interesting. I'm transitioning from this like high-powered business guy running for politics to like this hippie author, artist person here in my midlife. And so, yeah, I think there will be another book. I don't know exactly when. I think I'll continue to work on this one. The book just launched a month ago. I think I'll continue to work. There's a lot of momentum around this book and the ideas for another year or so, but I wouldn't be surprised if I launched another book in a year or two. Yeah.
And you are just embodying the creativity of what you're teaching. So that's in and of itself is authentic. That is what the podcast is about, for people to see that sometimes we cannot see why we do things, but hindsight's great. And you have drawn on all your experiences and put them into it and created something else. There are times in my life I've done things and you think how dull and boring and things, but it's really contributed. And everything is of value. All those messy bits are scrumptious. So just dive into them. Thank you so much for your wisdom and wishing you all the best. And I'm right behind you on this unity for peace for everybody.
Yes. Thank you, Philippa. It's great to be with you today. I hope people pick up a book. You can go to my website, jeffburningham.com. I'm on most social medias at Jeff Burningham. And like I said, I want it to be a conversation starter. So it was beautiful to have the conversation with you. And I'd love to hear what people think of the book after they read it.
Great. Well, I put all the links to all your connections. Thank you once again for your time, Jeff. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Philippa.
It was very refreshing for me to have a conversation with someone who was talking about turning things on their head and looking at the bottom line and morphing it into investing in social wisdom, because there is so much more to us than actually is on the surface. And as Jeff showed by his own intelligence that he drew on, that he was able to integrate it into wisdom to apply it. So I hope we've sown some seeds for conversation for you. And if you're intrigued to find out more and want to get his book, where you'll find heaps more, there'll be a link to his website in the show notes where you can find out all that information. So don't forget to share this episode. And if you've enjoyed the pearls of wisdom you've heard today, let me know by writing a review, as they're always appreciated. As are any ideas you have for subjects or guests you'd like me to consider in the future. Just email me on info@philippaross.com with your suggestions. So until next time, have fun, dig deep, open your mind to a world of possibilities, live life with a generous heart, and take steps to minimize waste and maximize your potential.